Hello everyone, Ogre27 Kane here today, and I want to do another episode of 10 Great Nintendo Switch Titles, Part 2. Today we're going to look at 10 more great Nintendo Switch titles. All of these are published by Nintendo, but not necessarily Nintendo-made games. They're all fantastic games in their own right, and I need to give a special shout out to Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and Torn of the Golden Country. I could not get them to capture. So, special acknowledgement, but they're not here. Let's start out with number 10, Cereza and the Lost Demon, Bayonetta Origins.
Cereza and the Lost Demon.
So first up on the list, we're going to start with Bayonetta Origins, and this game is not like the other 3 Bayonetta games, which are action-adventure games. This is an action puzzle game. It has some different mechanics and it requires you to think a little bit more outside of the box. It's definitely heavily story-driven and features a bunch of new and different mechanics that the series hasn't seen before. You can tell that this game was more of a labor of love and something fun they wanted to do. I don't know if they're getting tired of doing the same thing with Bayonetta, but it's cool to see a series branch out and try other things. Now, I'll be completely honest, I haven't had this game terribly long, and I got it because my daughter, Dovahkiin16, absolutely loves the Bayonetta series. We're trying this one out and seeing what it is, but so far, I don't know what she thinks of it. We'll get a little bit further into it, maybe we'll do a review on it, because I'd really like to see what this game has to offer. It is different than the others, but it still comes from the same great minds. And usually when a great mind has a great idea, it turns into something beautiful. So, I recommend checking this game out if you're a fan of the series or just like a lot of really cool art. Next up, let's do number 9, Xenoblade Chronicles, the Definitive Edition. Now, this game is completely different. I have an absolute ton of experience with it. I put well over 100 hours into it on the Wii, well over 100 hours into it on the 3DS, and now I probably put about 100 hours into it on the Switch. This game is absolutely gorgeous with an amazing story, awesome soundtrack, well-written characters, and a fun and progressive dialogue that continues to move forward and doesn't get stagnant at any point. The only thing that may get stagnant about this game is how often you get sidetracked and you don't carry the story on yourself. But I'll be honest, every single time this happened, it was 100% my fault. The combat in this series is pretty unique too. It's a lot more like a MMO, not so much a turn-based, but it does have turn-based elements. I like the way that it's extremely simplistic compared to the other 2 Xenoblade games, but still gives you enough power and control over your options and strategy to make it worthwhile and give you the ability to feel powerful. Yes, you can OP your character by simply just power leveling, but you can also include some pretty unique strategies and pretty different ways of playing the game. I also like the fact that the story is so well written that it keeps pushing and pulling you forward through the whole thing. One of my favorites. Let's move on now to number 8, Fire Emblem 3 Houses. So Fire Emblem 3 Houses was a project between Nintendo and Bandai Namco. It's not wholeheartedly an Intelligent Systems game, but it does have most of their top leadership and minds involved with it. You can feel that it's not quite the same as some of the earlier Fire Emblems. It's not to the caliber or quality of something like Awakening, but on top of that, the game does well, looks well, and plays well on the system that it's on. I haven't had the pleasure of playing Fire Emblem Engage yet, and I'd really like to. That's definitely one of the next games on my list, because this game looks really good on the Switch, and it plays good on the Switch. So I believe that Intelligent Systems has the ability and knowledge, like they've always done before on every other game, to improve over the next version on each continual version versus each system. Intelligent Systems is a high-quality company and a great game manufacturer, and I do love their products. I do also need to get the upgrade of Advance Wars 2. So, with that being said, enjoy this game if you like strategy tactic combat. It is one of the best on the Switch, and I highly recommend it if you just enjoy story alone. The only thing that kind of bothered me a little bit was the school mechanic, so I'm glad to hear that's gone from Engage. Let's move on now to Bayonetta, the original, and this is number 7 on our list. And I have a special guest with me on this one. It's going to be Dovahkiin, 16. So tell me, Dovahkiin, what's your favorite part about the first Bayonetta?
I really like the backstory and like the whole story and how it explains and what all happens to her like before the actual events of the game. It's got a good story and I think it's a lot better than the other two.
Who's your favorite character in the first Bayonetta?
I like Jeanne. Her backstory is like, she seems like the bad guy, but in all reality, like, she was trying to help Bayonetta in the end. She's a really good character.
Well, if you had to rate this one compared to the other 3, what place would you put this one in?
I would put it in about 2nd place. It's a good one, but it's not like my top favorite. So, thank you. See you later.
Well, thank you, Dovahkiin. We'll talk to you soon. Now, me personally, I have a lot more connection with the first Bayonetta, because I played this one way back in the day on the 360, and that was a great version. I've since picked it up on every subsequent system that I've owned and every upgrade and iteration of it that I could find. This one is by far my favorite one on the Switch, and I'm glad they finally gave us a physical copy of this game. It absolutely makes my day, and I love seeing the whole collection on the shelf. So let's move on now to the next one, number 6, Metroid Prime Remastered. Personally, I think this remaster is my favorite version of this game. Metroid Prime has always been one of my favorite games and favorite in the Metroid series, but to see the first one come back and look this beautiful and run this beautiful, it runs at a true 60 FPS and has a fantastic resolution. Everything from the original game is intact here, aside from a few little tiny graphical things that are not really important to me, but on top of that, they put in a lot of extras and added you some different options in the menu as well. New control schemes, new motion sensing, things like that. So if you really enjoy the series, this is definitely the best way to play it. And on top of that, there's a physical version, which if you know anything about me, is always the way to go. Now, being a first-person shooter, it's a different take on the genre, but still has a lot of the same mechanics of exploration and upgrading your weapons and items. If you need a different take or a fresh take on the Metroid universe, this is the best game to play. It is the first one in the series, but in my opinion maintains truest to what makes a Metroidvania great. If you need to see more on this game, go check out my review on my channel. So, let's move on to the next one now. Number 5, Bayonetta II. And once again, I have my special guest, Dovahkiin 16, helping me out on this one. Well, Dovahkiin, tell me, what is it that makes Bayonetta 2 special to you? What do you like the most about this?
I also enjoy the story in this one. It's like, it's a really good story. It's not as good as the first one, of course. But it's mainly about, like, Jeanne gets, like, her soul ripped out of her body by an infernal demon, and Bayonetta's to go rescue her. I really like that. Just the whole story itself.
Well then, of course, I also have to ask, where do you rank this Bayonetta in the series?
I would rank this one number 1. It's definitely my favorite out of all 3 of them. I like this story. It's, of course, not as good as the first one. But, like, I just really love this one. I have, like, a connection to this one.
So you have the whole package with this one, huh? The combat, the story, the combos, the characters. You love it all, huh?
Yes, of course.
Right on. Well, I like this one too, and this is definitely the first one Nintendo had a hand in making, and you can kind of feel the difference with this one. Wouldn't you agree? Mm-hmm. Well, thanks, Dovahkiin. On to the next one.
Thanks. Bye.
We'll see you soon. Well, as I mentioned earlier, Nintendo did have a hand in making this, and this was originally a Wii U game, so I'm glad to see that they gave it the Switch treatment and the good old port. Let's move on to the next one now, number 4, Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Well, having finished Xenoblade Chronicles 1 as many times as I have, and after partially finishing Xenoblade Chronicles 2, I'm about 75% of the way through it. I'm finally getting to a point where I actually want to start this game. Yes, I've owned it since day one on its release, but I haven't gotten into it simply out of the sheer fact that all of these stories are so interconnected. I feel like I need to get absolutely everything out of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 before I really move to this one. On top of that, I have the fantastic expansion of Torna the Golden Country to get through too. So, once I get through those, I will finally play through this, and I do plan to give it a full review because from everything I've heard, this is definitely the best game in the series and does a good job completing the entire arc of this story. I will say, for the couple hours I have put into the introduction to this game, it is definitely an upgrade over Xenoblade 2. They got a lot more out of the Switch, and the game performs a lot better. It looks better, performs better, sounds better. Not necessarily a better game, I won't go that far yet, but it is better in everything that they're using technically with it. So, if you want just simply the graphical upgrade, then go ahead and start with this one. From what I hear, it is a fully contained story and you don't need to play anything else to enjoy it. So let's move on now to number 3, Bayonetta 3. And once again, I have Dovahkiin16 sharing her thoughts with me, because she is, honestly, my resident Bayonetta expert in my household.
Bayonetta.
Well, Dovahkiin, tell me what it is about Bayonetta 3 that you really like.
I really like the characters and the gameplay. It's a lot smoother than the other two, considering it's a lot newer than the other ones.
Well, with that being said, who's your favorite character then?
I still really like Jeanne. I love her character arc and her whole story, and what I also really like is that in this one, she's got her own little side quest kind of thingies and like other side chapters that you can complete as her, as she's doing like her own thing and Bayonetta's doing another.
Well, obviously this one is ranked number 3 for you. Can you tell me why?
It's a good game and all, it's just I don't really like the story. The first two have like a better, it's better at like explaining it. In this one, you're just kind of running around getting chaos gears, and like it's kind of confusing for me because you play as like several different characters instead of just playing as Bayonetta the whole time. It's just like, I still like it, a really good game, it's just the story is a little bit confusing for me.
Well, thanks for all your input on these games.
Yes, of course. We'll see you next time.
That'll do it on the Bayonetta series for us, as we've covered all 4 games here. I really hope one of them has shown you how great they are, and you give it a try. Let's move on to our number 2 spot now, Metroid Dread. And this is one of the best games on the Nintendo Switch, hands down. If you know anything about me, you know I'm pretty obsessed with Metroidvanias. Obviously, Metroid is the series that started it all, and this game is no exception to that rule. This is definitely one of the best Metroidvanias on the Switch, if not one of the best Metroidvanias of all time. The story has a decent length to it, it's a little longer than some of the other ones, and it has some really cool and fun, unique upgrades to it. On top of that, this game has probably the best graphical presentation on the Switch, and some of the best art as well. The music is top-notch, and the whole game has a very ambient sort of horror-type feel to it. If you need to play a good Metroidvania, this is the best one to start with. I would even say this is better than Hollow Knight. That might be controversial, they're both fantastic games, but this game is everything I hoped would come to the system. Now, even though this is the 5th game in the series, it has a standalone adventure, and you don't need to have enjoyed any of the others to enjoy this one. I do recommend going back and enjoying them because they're great games in their own right, and the stories do connect, but you do not need to know what's going on with any of them. This game is a 10 out of 10 and a must-play on the Nintendo Switch. It is worth full price and full recommendation. I can't say anything more. Let's move on now to number 1, Astral Chain. Now, this game was recently just my game of the week. If you want to see a full review, go check that video out on my channel. I really enjoy this game and I speak pretty highly of it. This game has a really fast-paced combat and a really fun adventure to it. You basically play a detective who's out walking the beat trying to figure out and gather clues to what's going on with this redshift and understanding the world. You come across some creatures called Chimera and you basically take control of them through a device that you have. These Chimera have their own tactical abilities and become chained to you, in which you use them in tandem. This game has a very deep and fun and frantic combat system. If you enjoy Bayonetta, this is from the same guys that made that, and the combat feels that way. Now, although I said that, I still can't get Dovahkiin 16 to try it out, so eventually I might. But I really hope you enjoyed today's list. It was a lot of fun to make, and I really enjoyed having my special guest Dovahkiin 16 on here with me. Her input is always highly valued to me, and I love enjoying video games with my daughter. Well, thank you for watching today's list. It was a blast to make. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe, and have a great rest of your day. This is Ogre27 Kane signing out.